Fresh and
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all of my buds, as always, and it is episode 110. If you can believe it, it's going to be a lot of fun. We have Erika Forslof, who is a wonderful person, and we're going to have a lot of fun talking to her and getting her feel for, you know, what she thinks about bright lights and maybe even what I think about bright lights, as well as get into some judging talk and other aspects of the game that she has gotten into over the years. Now, but before we get to all that, I do want to shout out to the Patreon, which helps keep the show running, keeps the mics hot, the lights on. It is a great way to support the show. You can find that in the show notes, in the link tree, as well as other links for things like, well, the Spotify, which is where the show can be found, as well as all the other audio platforms. And if you can rate and like on that, that's pretty cool too. And the YouTube is still humming and dinging over there. We got a big video coming up. I don't want to exactly spoil what it is, but the script is being written. I'm not much of a script writer, but I'm doing it. So with all that being said, definitely give us a whole like, comment, subscribe over there. It really helps the show, helps us get visible in the front of all the important eyes out there. And you can also tune into the Bud Rush Bella, which is on Wednesday evenings, Eastern, 9:30. Typically, it might change. We're not doing it every Wednesday currently because it's just a very busy time for Papa Fresca over here. So we will get back to our scheduled, weekly show whenever we can. But without further ado, let's get to Erika and maybe Charmer at the end of the show. All right, we are here with the wonderful Erika Forslof, and we have a great episode for you all today. And I'm super happy to have you here, Erika. Well, first of all, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Thank you. I'm good. It's been a long day, so I'm a bit exhausted, but it's all good. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, well, we will make sure that, we only go for 6 hours. We're going to go over every single card that has ever been printed. No, I'm kidding. But we do have a great episode for you all today. Erika's awesome. Super awesome for Erika to agree to be on the show, first of all, especially with the time change, or not time change, time zone difference. I wanted to have Erika on because, whether it's playing, judging, or even casting, sometimes you embody a lot of what Flesh and Blood is, and what the community is, and what I think we all should aspire to be, kind of a wholesome, multifaceted person in the game. So I wanted to, feel out like your journey and kind of go into some bright light stuff there at the end. But first of all, when did it all begin for you in the trading card space?
Well, I love games. Surprise no one. So, for trading card games, I haven't really dabbled a lot in the physical card game space before. I dabbled a little bit into Magic like 10 years ago when one of my colleagues tried to hook me up over lunch and be like, hey, you want to try Magic the Gathering? And I'm like, I don't have anything else to do. I can try. Didn't go well. I imagine that Magic the Gathering wasn't really for me because the way that it played out was really one-sided for me. Like, either you drew your lands and everything was fine, or you didn't draw your lands and everything was shit. And then you have to mulligan, and you have to find your lands, and you just pray that you get there, right? So it wasn't really for me. I didn't really like it that much. And then I played a lot of Hearthstone way back when that one launched. I tried to go for Legendary because I'm a very competitive player at heart, and failed at that. I think I came rank 2 at one point in time, and that was the best I could do, and then I gave up. But I've been a very competitive player for a very long time. I played StarCraft, the Heroes of the Storm, the Dota, the Warcraft 3 mods, all the way back when. And so Flesh and Blood really stood out to me as a very competitive card game where I could, partly meet people face to face, but also play very competitively against them.
Well, that's awesome. The competitive spirit obviously is alive and well within you. But currently, obviously a lot of your time and energy is going towards Flesh and Blood. What about some of those other games you had played? Do you still dabble in let's say StarCraft or whatever these days?
I mean, playing those games competitively like I want to do takes a lot of hours and takes a lot of repetition, takes a lot of effort. So I feel like I can only do so much with my time, right? Because I have a full-time job and need to juggle life and everything at the same time. So I feel like going into Flesh and Blood is the only card game I can't really put down my time and effort to at the moment to play at that level I really want to be in. Also keep up with all the cards and all the bans restricted and all the news and announcements and all of that good stuff. I love to watch the streams that go on a almost weekly basis now. It feels like there's so much content out there that you can just follow along, and I want to look at the pros playing the best games and just learn lines and learn what's good and what's bad and follow along. So I spend a lot of time digging through that content, you know.
Well, you bring up a good point there about that there's like a stream almost every weekend at this point, and obviously shout out to Savage Feats and whoever else is doing these big productions, which probably is tough to do. Do you find that watching these high level games is an effective way to learn more about how to be a great player, or is it not for everybody to learn that way?
I think it's not the most effective way to do it. I think the most effective way is to sit down with your cards and play physically with someone face to face. That is probably the most effective part, especially if you want to go pro and go to those big tournaments out and abroad, as I do. Then you probably want to sit down and play face to face, which I do. We have 2 weekly armors that run here in Stockholm on a weekly basis, and I try to go to them every single week. I'm also the tournament organizer for one of them, so I kind of have to go to at least one of them each week. I don't think it's the most effective way. I think for me it's more entertaining, and also for me trying to keep up with what's good and what's bad, because a lot of the meta stuff is happening in those spaces. So from a meta perspective, you can really get your hands on, okay, I see there's 50% Lexi in the people playing Battle Hardened last weekend. There might be something there, right? Yeah. So you typically find your edges there where you see, okay, I might want to look into these decks or want to try these things out. And you see a card maybe being played that you haven't realized was that good, and find inspiration basically to bring home to your own games, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, here's an interesting question for you. I'm just going on tangents here at this point, but you just reminded me of all these things. But like, so you're a European-based player, and obviously over here, the States, we get a lot of those Savage Feet streams and etc. I've always found that the meta seems to still feel a lot different over across the Atlantic Ocean, right? If you even look at like the UK Nats, it just looked vastly different from the US Nats. Do you have any kind of insight on why that might be, outside of just, well, it's just different people and they're playing differently over there?
Well, it's interesting when you go abroad here in Europe and you go to these local battle hardens that happens on occasion. Then the typical local metas that you have in the UK, in Sweden, or in Scandinavia in general, or in the southern parts of Europe or Middle East Europe, then all of these come clashing together and you find a very spicy localized meta that brings everything together. I mean, in UK, Ninja is typically a very popular choice. So whenever you go over to UK, you see a lot of Ninja in the population. In Scandinavia, people typically play their pet decks. So you can see everything from the Levias, the Reinars, the Azaleas, and the all of these rogue decks that you typically don't see a lot of in other metas. I faced a Riptide in my first game at Nationals in Sweden. So, I mean, there is a lot of variance there. We basically only saw a couple Lexis in our local Nationals. We were like 60 or 70 players in our Nationals. So it's super interesting to see how the meta diverses. And I also look at the Asia sometimes when they play their callings or their battle hardens, how much that also differs in a completely different way. So it's really interesting to see. And all of these typically combines together when we go into the worlds, where we bring all of these worldwide metas together and just collide on one single weekend. So it's super interesting to see how those things localize in a way regionally.
Yeah, no, I think it's very cool, especially because you get to see like spice that you're just not used to, right? Like and a region that I'm really excited for to kind of enter the fray, to kind of add the new kind of view perspective on playing and building decks in this game is Japan, right? You know, obviously they're about to have Battlehard Tokyo, which is like very exciting, and obviously, you know, that culture loves trading card games, and I always love to see what they come up with. Obviously, we all love trading card games. That's why we're here. But it'd be that one extra bit of the puzzle to see how they're thinking about the game compared to Europeans, compared to Americans. And I think it's going to be, there's going to be a lot to study, I think, in terms of deck building, and that's very exciting. Now, let's let me get myself back on track here. But yeah, so you were never really a trading card game player. You tried Magic, very variants, you know, lands, no lands. I get it. I played Magic for a long time. Now, when exactly did Flesh and Blood enter the fray for you? You know, when did you discover it and it's like, oh wow, this is gonna be a super competitive game?
It must have been end of 2021 when they released Tales of Aria, right?
Yeah, that was fall 2021.
Right. So me and my boyfriend had a common friend who got really into the game, and he really loved it. And he liked to brag about how much he loved going to these local armors. And we were like, yeah, sure, whatever. And so one day he came over to our house, and they were just going to have dinner, and he brought these decks with him. And one of the decks were Briar, the Ball of Lightning Briar that we all know and famous. And so he got me to try it, and I was hook, line, and sinker after he told me about the different ways you could win with that deck, and we tried it against each other, and it just blew my mind how fun it was and how interactive it was compared to what I remember Magic and Hearthstone to be. Like, you have all of these interactions, and you have all of these ways that you can play on your opponent's turn, and how your cards interact, and how you can play the value game from the cards that you have. And you need to do that every single turn, because you're going to draw up 4 new cards, and you don't know what that's going to be. But out of the information you have in front of you, you make the best out of the situation every single turn, and that what makes it really, really exciting and really, really enticing. So yeah, after that play night, I was hook, line, and sinker. We went to our local LGS, and we bought the starter decks, and we went into armories, and there was some skirmish going on, and my boyfriend won the race of reflex play mat, and it was off to the races. It was super fun. And also the community that came around it, also like people at the same age, people of the same aspirations, and everyone just coming together and having a good time for these armories. And it was really, really nice to find new friends and then travel the world together to play this game in the end. It was a really, really roller coaster experience for the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it does have its way of sinking its teeth into all of us, right? You know, like obviously the gameplay is great, right? The gameplay, you can't argue with it at this point. But the social aspect and the community is great. Although, you know, sometimes, you know, it's got its ups and downs, but overall this game has had such an amazing community. And, you know, it's even at the local level all the way to the macro level with you know, Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. But I do know that you are a judge, and I do want to ask you why. Why judging? It's something that I've always kind of, it's not confused me, but like, oh man, I love playing the game. Like, you know, I want to be the person calling the judge, not judging. But I'm glad folks do it. I always want to know your reasonings, and every judge, their reasoning as to why they want to judge.
So my reason from the beginning wasn't that I wanted to judge per se. I became a tournament organizer for one of the local LGSs like 1.5 years ago, and with that I wanted to take the Judge Zero test, because I thought that was a prerequisite to become someone who actually knows something that you can hold a tournament from. So I took the Judge Zero test, and from that I realized, oh shit, but you can actually use this to gain more knowledge about the game, because the questions they ask in these forums are really, really good and really stretches your way of thinking around the card interactions and different ways that you probably never encounter on your day-to-day basis. So I brought it upon myself to just take the Judge 1 test at a point in time where I just thought this is going to help me learn the game on a higher level. So I used it as an assistance tool, more or less. And from that, my boyfriend also took the Judge 1 test. He also started the journey of becoming a level 2 judge, because here in Scandinavia it was really hard to find a level 2 judge. And going into the national season of last year, we didn't have one. So we had to bring in someone from Finland or Norway to, you know, come over here and help us out. So that was something we needed to solve. So this year has been the goal of bringing more Judge 2 to Scandinavia, so we could solve that for this year's national season. And this year we actually have 3 level 2 judges in Sweden. I believe there are 2 or 3 level 2 judges in Finland, and I think we have 2 in Norway. So we have ramped that up quite a lot to our success, because now we can actually play national season without that being a burden. But from my perspective, it was purely from like, I want to learn the game more and I want to understand it at a deeper level, because Flesh and Blood is hard and it's so many interactions, there's so many rules. Like, I've read the rules and judgment text so many times, and there's still caveats in there that are like mind-blowing sometimes. So it's really interesting from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's crazy to me. Like, someone who doesn't think about it, it's like, oh, I thought just level 2 judges just, they were born that way, and all of a sudden they were here, and we never had to worry about it, and they just showed up. But that's the struggles of finding one. Probably in the beginning it's tough, but like it's great that you've made progress there, and really have kind of not fixed the problem, but like definitely helped the problem. Obviously more L2 judges probably good for the game. So keep doing it, everybody that's listening. We need you. So I do have a question. There's been a lot of talks about rules and all that. I don't want to get into any kind of inflammatory conversation about any of it, especially with how it's been. But I do want to ask, is there anything you'd like to see changed in Flesh and Blood, whether it's the judging side of things and the rules, or even community, etc.?
I'm not sure. I'm pretty happy with how things are at the moment. I'm happy with the latest changes and everything that is working these days. I don't see any major issues by far, and I don't have anything to compare with either. I've never been a Magic judge, I've never been a Yu-Gi-Oh judge, Pokemon judge, you name it. So I don't have a lot to compare with. But from my perspective, I was judging the UK Nats. I was traveling there to help them out to judge their UK nationals, and from that perspective, I feel like I have enough to be able to go there and do a good job, thanks to the resources and the facilitation that the judge system provides today. So I think what we have right now, considering how young this game is really phenomenal. And the judge community is already very phenomenal in order to help support and keeping a really high standard for how we want judging to be at these bigger events. I've never had any issues with any judge at any point in time for any of my big events. They've all been very super happy and helpful. So they are doing God's work on us, making sure that the events are as pleasurable as they can be. So I really admire how much LSS has put their time and effort into this space. And of course, Joshua Scott, who's also put a tremendous amount of work into this space, creating the judge community and everything. So I commend them a lot for all the great work that they have been doing. And I don't really have a lot to complain about. I feel like they have done so many great things that it's hard to find something to complain about, really. I just admire that they have done so much great work, and we're in a time and space where we can support each other in the judge community, and we can have level 2 judges now in Scandinavia, and keep the community going, basically.
Yeah, no, that's incredible to hear, because it's easy to nitpick, right? I think people do that all the time. But if things are going, if the going's good, let's just keep it going. If it ain't broke, no, don't fix it. Yada yada yada.
One thing.
What?
Now when I think about it.
Okay, right. Hit me.
Yeah. So for this national season, what they did is that they scheduled all of the Scandinavian nationals at the same weekend.
That's brutal.
Which made it really tough for us, because we typically rely on each other in Scandinavia. Like, we fly in people from Norway or Finland to do our streaming and casting, and vice versa. Also for judging. So typically when we play nationals, you want to play your local nationals, right? Because it's a big event and it's a lot at stake. So we take a lot of help from each other in the Scandinavian community to help each other out. But what happened this year is that both Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and Norway had their nationals on the same weekend, which made it really hard for us. So we have sent this feedback to LSS, but if there's something, please think about your local communities, and please don't stack them on top of each other for next year, please.
Yeah, no, I agree. Don't do that, folks. LSS, this is another PSA. Don't do that. I'm sure they're working on it. But yeah,
I trust them.
Yeah. And you know what? If anything, they respond to the the complaints, or not complaints, the things that need to be
Concerns?
changed. Yeah, the concerns.
Yeah.
They respond pretty promptly and correctly, and which is probably why the game has been so healthy going forward now.
And that was also the reason why I traveled to the UK, because I thought if we struggle to find judges, because most of the people want to play in their local nationals, then probably other countries struggle too. So what I saw that they were applying for, they opened the application for judges in the UK, and I saw it was going to be in Leeds, and me and my boyfriend went to Leeds in 2022 for the Battle Harden, and we really, really enjoyed it. And the UK community is absolutely awesome, and so I really wanted to go back there if I had a chance. So I thought, I'll just apply, and if they need me, right? And I can make the trip over there, and it's fine. I'm just gonna have a good time and meet the locals and do my best work, you know. And so the application came through. The application came to deadline, and I was called in, and so there I went. So apparently they also needed judges, even though they are a much bigger community and they probably have the judge muscles to take care of it themselves. But in the end, they were happy to have me, so I was happy to help out there.
Yeah, the rising tide raises all ships. You know,
Yes.
I always get that one right. But now I do want to ask you a question. So, you know, you made a big splash recently, Erika, with your GOAT spreadsheet. So, you know, there's always it always comes up who's the GOAT of Flesh and Blood. Obviously, it's almost ridiculous because it's only been a couple of years and not everybody's been playing the whole time. Yada yada yada. But you said, hey, Flesh and Blood community, I'm just putting this stuff on a spreadsheet, and you guys make up your mind, all right, based on the data. So what inspired you to do that?
So me and my boyfriend made a lot of spreadsheets in the past, like keeping track of meta, keeping track of who won the latest the ProQuest seasons. We did a spreadsheet for that. This fall last year, we did a spreadsheet keeping track of like what are the top 8 heroes contention for the different local metas, and then we could see, okay, these heroes are the most popular. So we were really interested in collecting that type of data and just pulling it out and see what the spread looked like on a global basis. So it basically came out of that, and also the whole discussion always transpired into, oh, who do you think is the best player? Oh, who do you think is the best player? And it's always like a non-informed discussion, because we have the information, it's just not collected anywhere. And so that stood out to me, like, yeah, we have the information, why hasn't anyone just, you know, pulled all the data together and we could have it in one place? So that's what we started doing. So I was sick for a week and I was bored. I had watched everything I wanted to watch on Netflix, you know, and I was bored. And so I sat down on my computer and I saw there was another GOAT discussion going on. And then I was like, you know what? I don't have anything better to do today. So I'm just going to start a spreadsheet and start collecting data. And that's what I did. Because I was also curious to understand, maybe there are players out there who are doing really, really well, but no one really knows about them because they're not doing super, super well, but maybe they're doing just, you know, they're out there, they're pulling top 8s, they're winning some good money, you know. So I was super curious for my own sake that I wanted to find this out. So I started pulling that data, and it took 3 days, more or less. Maybe, 3 full working hours, or full working days, so to speak, to collect everything that they had, because LSS is amazingly good at collecting their recap data for whenever they have a top 8. They are super good at displaying that data. So you started collecting all the top 8s and collecting all the names, and there are people who have changed names over the years. So sometimes you could find a player who all of a sudden has almost the same name, but there's like one character plays differently or something like that. So you had to trickle those out and try to understand what has happened there. And, you know, sometimes it was just a spelling error, and sometimes it was other mistakes, and try to figure those things out. So, you know, it took quite a while. And now we have this basically master spreadsheet, and we continue to fill this out. I actually filled it out today with the results from the Battle Harden that was this weekend in Portland, and also from Florence that will come out in the next couple of days whenever LSS releases that recap. But it's a living document that we try to populate. Is the right word, on a weekly-ish basis, as long as the tournaments keeps coming out, and we just keep adding to it to see how the best players are looking at the moment, and also try to see on different metrics, because the Fab Goat discussion never really submerged into what are the metrics that we're using to determine who is right. So we started discussing that, and we were like, yeah, well, the metrics we have is like who had made the most top 8s, who had converted those into most wins, and who has made the most money. Like those are the 3 basically easiest things to look at in terms of the data we have and the data we can accumulate. So that's what we did. We made a top list for all 3 of them, and here we are. So like here we have all the data, and you can make a more informed discussion based around that, and hopefully we can have a better discussion around that topic going forward, and also a very interesting data point, I guess.
Yeah, well, I do have to say, I mean, I hope that people use it as an informed way to discuss the conversation. But as someone who ignores data all the time, but especially with my deck choices, I think people might ignore it. I hope they don't, though. I hope they don't. But do you think the data is conclusive based on those metrics, or is it just something to support the conversation?
I think it's more to support, because the question still remains, like, what is the ultimate determining factor on who is the best player in the world? And that could be subjective to, like, yeah, but who won Worlds this year? Yeah, that is probably the best player then, because that was the absolute biggest tournament of the year, and winning that is probably a feat on its own. So that should probably stand pretty tall in the terms of measurement in that sense. And I agree. But in terms of just collecting and looking at all the data and seeing, okay, but here are some of the players that we see a lot of the time, and here is maybe some players we don't see a lot of the time, and they are doing really, really well. So it might be interesting to see or spot those players as they come rising up in the coming years.
Absolutely.
And
now, is this something you do, data compilation? Do you do this outside of Flesh and Blood, or is this just something like, hey, I want to do it?
No, I work as an engineer manager at my day-to-day job, so I do very little to none of those sort of data compilation stuff. My boyfriend does a lot more. He works as a QA, as a data engineer, so he does a lot of Excel and data type work on his day-to-day basis. So he's typically the one doing all the brain work in the back end. Like, he was the one making all the automations for catching all of the upcoming events. That was for nationals, for example. We didn't want to go through all of the different nationals, clicking through and just pulling out, because there are so many different price supports for the different events, because depending on size you would have a different price support, and sometimes the size wouldn't even be a determining factor, so we couldn't really make justified conclusions based on, but if this event is this big, is this much prize money on the line? No. Some European countries at least have no prize money on the line, because, for example, in Germany they have these weird price laws where you can't have pricing money on the line, because that's a gambling rule all of a sudden, and it's weird. So some countries don't have even prize money on the line. So that was also interesting to capture that into the whole thing. So he just made automation for all of that. So he just made a little Python script where he captured all of the information on the Fab TCG website and pushed that into the Excel. So we didn't have to sit and do that for another 3 hours, and that is something that is still being done in the works, to just automate as much as possible, so we don't have to do the manual inserting every time a new update happens. So he is the brain behind everything, and he also made a life counter for the mobile phones for both Android and iOS, called the Fab Counter.
So he
yeah, nice. So he does a lot of extraordinary work alongside his day-to-day thing that is behind the scenes type of situation. He also loves to program and does that type of stuff. So we really do a good team on that end.
No, I love it. And also, it's just very funny to me to think about, the countries where you can't do prize money. So-and-so won X amount of dollars playing Flesh and Blood, but what about so-and-so? He won X amount of boxes of Tales of Aria or something like that,
Yes.
Oh. But, speaking of winning boxes of Tales of Aria, this is a bad segue, but we have a segment in the show called Fresh Faves, where I'm going to ask you a few of your favorite cards in the game, and hopefully you answered them. Are you ready?
Yes.
First, who is your favorite hero?
It must be Briar, right? After the whole, if if Briar and Ball of Lightning wasn't a thing, I don't think I'd be here. It's almost that bad. But it was my first love. It was my first hero that I played relentlessly into until PT Lil, I would say. It was after PT Lil that I started pivoting off of that after not doing too hot on her that day, unfortunately. But been segueing into a lot of other heroes and finding joy elsewhere, basically. But I will always remember Briar fondly as the hero that got me into this.
Yeah, I think that's probably a common answer for a lot of folks. Tales of Aria was a big boom for the game. Now, what is your favorite weapon?
I like the Kodashi.
Okay. All right.
Mostly because it has its own like tagline. Yeah, that's fine, but Kodashi is like, yeah, Kodashi for 1.
Yeah.
Every single armor, you go there with your iron, it's like, oh, all of a sudden Kodashi for 2, it's almost got its own tagline, and I love it. It's probably one of those weapons that feels it's gonna stay with us forever. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, until Katsu, Living Legends, right? Then we gotta get new Kodachis. What is your favorite equipment?
Fienda Spring Tunic.
I mean,
it's got the most beautiful art. If I had all the money in the world, I would spend it on a full art tunic any day. It's so pretty, and it has cost me so much headache over the years just remembering to tick that one up. But I absolutely love it. The artwork is amazing, and the card is intriguingly powerful, but it requires you to stay on top of your stuff, right, to maximize its value. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh shit, I forgot the tunic trigger, now my turn is just so and it's a very interesting type of equipment.
It's iconic. It really is. Whether you love it or hate it is iconic. What is your favorite run-of-the-mill card, the card you put in your deck, non-attack action, attack action, or instant?
I love Tome of the Arknight. It's so good. Nothing hits like a Tome of the Arknight hits. I mean, Sonata is like, yeah, I got 1 card, yay. And it's like hitting a Tome of the Arknight. That's like you don't even expect this to hit. Like the odds are so bad, and even though you run a 50% deck with non-attack to attack ratio, and you have exactly that ratio going in your graveyard and banish zone, whatever, and you hit that Tome of the Arknight, and you just show the first one is a non-attack, oh shit, and then you hit the next one, oh shit, that is an attack action, oh my god, and it's like, it hits so good, and it's so fun to play, and I force that into my Briar deck whenever I can, but sometimes it just doesn't work, because you can't always run that 50-50 ratio and be fine with it. It's really tricky, so sometimes you just hit it, and it's the best feeling. I love it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been on both ends. I've been on all 4 ends, right? I've been on playing it, hitting, missing, and playing against it, them hitting and missing, and it's always exciting, regardless. I mean, it's a Russian roulette of flesh and blood. Yeah, it really is. Now, that was the fresh faves. And that was a pretty good list. I always get worried when someone starts with Briar. I'm like, we're gonna get Rosetta, Ball Lightning. But I mean, Tome of the Arknight is a
it's a card.
It is certainly a card. Now, we're recording this on Monday the 18th, September 18th. So for those of you listening at home or watching on the YouTube, check that out. We do not know what the third hero is yet. 3 Floating is spoiling it at midnight in tonight. We will see what the third hero is in Bright Lights. But we can still make some predictions on what we think we're going to see in spoiler season, because we're about to get a bunch of spoilers, and it's going to be a lot of fun and very interesting. This is the first all-mech set. We've talked about that ad nauseum at this point, but it is still unprecedented, and it's worth talking about. Now, we've seen all the heroes. We've seen the new Dash, which is very interesting. I should read it out for those who haven't seen the new Dash. Dash Database, which is the young version, 4 intellect, as per usual, 18 health. You may look at the top card of your deck at any time. Once per turn, you may play a Mechanologist item with cost 0 or 1 from the top of your deck, as though it were an instant. It costs an additional 1 resource to play. This is very exciting. A lot of potential here. What are your initial thoughts when you saw this, Erika?
That was spot on. So, fun fact, me and my boyfriend started debating, like, giggling about, like, what do you think this new hero is going to be? It's going to be a new dash. What's it going to do and stuff like that. And I don't typically like to go into speculations because I feel like, what's the point, right? Because tomorrow we're going to know anyway, so what I think now is not going to matter. But for once, I started thinking, like, wouldn't it be really cool if you could just look at the top of your card, and if it was an item, you could just play it out? That would just be fantastic. And then we watched the reveal, and we saw the text on that hero, and I was like, are you kidding me?
You nailed it.
I was like, holy shit! I was like having a brain fart moment, and me and my boyfriend was like hysterically laughing at the fact that this hero was doing exactly what I predicted. So that one was amazing. And for this next hero, I have no clue. This next hero is probably out as we speak. I haven't seen it yet.
It's definitely out. Oh, and I can't believe they put that on a card. Isn't that crazy? Now, so compared to current Dash that we have, old faithful Dash, how do you think this new Dash kind of compares? Is this something that has a little bit more combo potential, or going to be totally different from what Dash is originally trying to do? And which do you think is going to be better? Just in theory.
So, I mean, looking at the card and looking at the hero's life total, seeing that it's only 18 life, that already tells us something, right? Because LSS wouldn't put less than 20 on a hero if they thought it wasn't bonkers. And also this ability to be able to play more cards than you're allotted to. Like, basically having those draw card effects, having those being able to basically play extra cards on your turn has been really, really powerful. So looking at that ability to just being able to play out items from your top is insane. But that also, we need to factor in what are the type of cards that you can play on top of your deck, because having the 0 to 1 cost limitation says a lot, and we don't know if there's going to be any more items or new items or any items or reprints or how it's going to look going into this set yet. So it all depends on what the items is going to look like for the 0 and 1 costs. But I think it's going to come down to very interesting play and a very aggressive play if you have your new boost attacks or any items that can just power you through and make it really, really affordable for you to play those things out on top of your deck.
Yeah, I mean, it has the potential to go pretty off, just be able to pump out those items. But items are a real cost. Actually, holy smokes, I think we just saw the new hero. As we were, okay, all right, I just pulled up February, folks. This is like, no lie. I thought it was at midnight. Maybe it's midnight somewhere else. It's the other hero is Max Nitro. This is the young version that I'm looking at. 4 intellect, 20 health. This is actually just perfect. This happened. I actually can't believe it, Erika. Once per turn action, 2 resources. Create a hyperdriver token with 2 steam counters. Activate this ability only if you've boosted this turn. Okay. Hyperdrivers you control get crank. As it enters the arena, you may remove a steam counter from it. If you do, gain an action point. Okay, this is a lot to take in here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we did see Star City Games doing the hyperdriver tokens with their bundle or whatever. So this is the tokens that they were talking about. You can create 1, 2 steam counters, activate this only if you boost it. So you boost something, pay 2, create this hyperdriver, and then you can crank it to get an extra action point, because the once per turn action does not have go again. Very interesting. What's your initial reaction here, Erika? This is crazy.
Well, this explains a lot on why the hyperdrivers are all of a sudden a token.
Yeah.
Because that was a lot like tobacco when that dropped, and we're like, holy shit, they're releasing a cold foil hyperdriver. Oh, nice. And I was like, but wait, it's a token? What? Mind blown. Yeah. So that created a lot of speculations, and here we have the answer already. So you get to create a hyperdriver token, and you get to do steam cutters on it, and once per turn do that. But you can only do it if you're boosted this turn. But also this new crank ability is really, really interesting. Like, gaining action points is huge, and you don't have to boost to do it, and it's wow.
Yeah, this is
super cool.
This is very cool. I mean, obviously, there's.
I love the art.
The art's very cool. Max is just sitting there with this really punk haircut, blue hair.
Yeah.
I theorized that it was Lena's brother. I don't even know. I'm just making up stuff at this point, but super cool. It's got this huge like wrench kind of thing, which is cool. It's got crank. Everything's got crank.
It's not a crank.
Yeah. And it's going to be super interesting. And obviously, there was stuff from Dynasty that had to deal with the hyperdrivers, so that stuff will come into play here. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This deck's going to have like a lot of synergy going on. Obviously, all the mech stuff does, but this is. I mean, it's pretty crazy. So I don't even. I mean, this is totally new for us, folks.
Fresh off the press.
Fresh off the press. This is like when I recorded the episode with Riley Groff. And Fab 2.0 came out while we were talking, and I was like, let's go through it. So very
nice.
cool. Max seems very awesome. Now, okay, well here's a question for you. Does this on its surface seem like a hyperdriver deck is going to be super viable for Max? I mean, it's obviously required. Or not even required because you can create the token, but like, will Max want to play the OG hyperdrivers?
I think so. I think we're gonna see hyperdriver reprint for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot of sense, and I mean, there's so many fun things you can do with this, and you have to play out the hyperdrivers from your hand though. So
yes.
That's the thing.
Yeah, you do. But that's pretty.
But you can also create them. So I mean, you don't have go again on your hero ability either. So that's a bit awkward. But definitely, yeah, interesting to see how this is gonna pan out. Really.
See, and as actually, it's funny. Before I even saw that, I was about to ask you because you mentioned that Dash Database has less than 20/40 health. And obviously means it's bonkers. Explain Riptide to me, Erika, because he only had 19. He's bonkers.
He can do damage that you can't prevent.
That's true. It was a limited thing. 100% limited. But anyway,
it's bonkers. You can't even prevent it.
I know. Well, I mean,
brush off, I guess. But I mean, who sits there with a brush off every time he waits for Riptide to pop off? I don't know.
Yeah. Now, okay, so we have all three heroes. So we see a little bit of the idea of the landscape of what the limited format is, and also what we're going to get in CC Blitz, etc. I do want to, before we even talk about what that might mean, what do you make of Teklevasen and this Evo mechanic? Because this Teklevasen seems to be the biggest departure from traditional Flesh and Blood thinking so far, right? It's doing a lot of new things, like building a mech out of like, obviously we saw the Metro the Mechanoid, but this is different. And he has a very similar ability to even Kano in a way.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of it? Is this something that excites you? Is this something that we should be not worried about, but like, oh, this is the true contender coming out of Bright Lights?
I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a hero that does something really, really different. And I think from the perspective of Flesh and Blood being the game where all the heroes start at their max life and their max capabilities, with all of their equipment's on maximum capacity, and they just daggle down as the game goes on. Teklevasen basically says, well, I'm just going to start at this point, and I'm going to try to build up to this point and try to become more and more powerful as I make more and more evil things out on the playfield. And I think that's going to be a more of a control deck as he tries to build up and become more stronger and stronger and try to take down his opponent by brute force at the end of it, instead of just, forcing down boost attacks and just chugging along with these hyperdrivers for extra action points and just try to rush things down. So it's a completely different ballgame. I'm super excited to try it out. But I think we have a good trifecta now with the more mid-rangey, more aggro-ish, more controllers type of mech. And it's really, really interesting how they pull this together, considering that they're all mechanologists at the end of it. And we used to thought that mechanology was this boost, and now they have really fleshed out this whole mechanologist world and landscape that we knew, and it's really, really fun to see the landscape that they bring out with these new heroes.
Yeah, no, it's very, very interesting. I'm interested to see how the limited format plays out. We'll obviously get a better idea of that. Yeah, with like,
4 booster packs sealed.
4 booster packs sealed is going to be pretty wild. I do like that you can play a lot of. There is a way to play these other archetypes within the other heroes. Obviously, it might not make a lot of sense to do so, but the option to do that is exciting. Now, are you a big limited player, Erika?
I wasn't until I became.
Okay, all right. That's usually how it goes.
Yeah, so beating Michael Hamilton in that Uprising sealed in Lille really set the deal that I might be actually good at this. Maybe. Who knows? But that was really, really fun. And I really, really loved Uprising sealed. And if I get a chance to play Uprising sealed today, I would absolutely take it. I did play one at our nationals when I got defeated in top 8. There was a side event happening that we're gonna play Uprising sealed, and I was like, I'm down. Give me that Icelander, I'm gonna crush some fights. Ended up crushing 3 dramas in a row. It was super fun. So it's something I try to maintain alongside my CC capabilities, but it's also harder to maintain because you have to have your group. You need to have someone to actually play with. Has made a little bit easier now with the Runaways Discord channel, where they host these queues that you can just join along, and they will create these automatic drafts, and you can play them at Talishar, and everything is great. So that really helps, and it helped a lot prepping up into national season this year to try Monarch out, because you don't really easily get a group of 8 to draft Monarch these days. So that was super helpful. So it's something I try to become better at, because I think a lot of people coming from various other TCGs from before has a lot to gain from that experience, and I don't. I played Hearthstone before they started their own, or maybe Arena is the closest thing I can get to it, which is not nearly the same thing. So I try to learn a lot in that space, and I really, really enjoy a good limited set like Uprising. Monarch is fine. Tales of Aria, not my favorite, but it works. And I'm super looking forward to this one, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, like Uprising being one of your favorites. You know, I enjoyed Uprising as well. Although, you know, my complaint was always, and I think it was a lot of people's complaints, was very on rails, right? You know, it's like, all right, I'm in this or I'm in that, and is what it is. This feels like it's going to be the total opposite, because I mean, this is going to be like the Wild West. Reading these picks and be like, oh my god, I got a hyperdriver. Max must be open. No, he took another hyperdriver. It's like, you know, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm excited, and Max looks pretty cool. That was really cool that we just got to see Max live on air, Erika. You know,
awesome.
I think I called ahead to 3 floating. I don't know if they spoiled it on time or not, because I thought it was supposed to be midnight. But I called ahead and said, "Hey, spoil that early for me," and they definitely did.
Please do.
Now I got some listener questions, Erika, if you're ready to answer them.
Oh, sure thing.
First comes from Greg, aka Darth Prentice. When can you hear when can we hear you on a broadcast again? Any plans for casting and commentary for games in the future? Because you are an excellent caster.
Thank you. So I've been casting a lot of different games. Like I mentioned, I already did StarCraft and Heroes of the Storm back in the day. I used to do Swedish broadcasting for those games for our local scene back in the day, and also for some bigger communities whenever our Swedish crew traveled abroad and played these bigger arenas. We did a Swedish version of the English streams at the time. It was really fun. But that really carried over into the casting I do today for Flesh and Blood, and it's really, really fun. And I did Antwerpen, as you may know. Super fun with Ark and Roman from Oil of Ophidia, and the crew there was super amazing, super fun. And yeah, there are more casting opportunities coming up, but I can't reveal them yet. So stay tuned on my Twitter if you want to know more.
Well, I hope it's some big stuff, because, you know, obviously you are just a bright personality, and just a lot of fun to listen to talk. I mean, I'm having fun over here.
Thank you.
You know, I think the Flesh and Blood community can gain a lot from listening to you casting some games, and it'd be nice to get you in the booth, maybe over in America sometime. That'd be fun. Show these Yankees what for.
This European with a Swedish accent is so cute.
Next question comes from Armor, who actually has 2 questions. And first the question is, have you ever had an I am the judge moment? I don't know what this is in reference to, but if you know, maybe you can help. Maybe it was like a big moment, like, oh, I am a judge now. Like, they asked you a question and you're like, oh no, I know this question.
I mean, most of the questions I got when I judged UK NAS were pretty straightforward. Like most of them, like, oh, I missed this trigger. Okay, can we rewind? We will rewind. Just make a caution and move on. So I didn't really feel a lot of pressure doing the UK NAS, at least. Apart from that, I also did judging for the pre-release event for Not Bright Lights, Dusk to Dawn, when we did that. But that was basically the same thing. The questions were self-explanatory, and sometimes someone calls a judge, I come over there and try to figure out the situation, and as we try to figure out the situation, they come up with the answers themselves, and everything is fine. So not really. I just had a really, really fun time, and I didn't think I would enjoy judging and be that type of person in that setting as much as I did in the end. I was really, really nervous going into it. I was like, I don't know anything. I did so many reading through materials, and I did the Judge 2 test just to feel like I knew something at least. Just to, Judge 2 tests are super, super hard. And they of course it should be, right? Yeah. It makes sense. But it was super, super hard. It was super, super difficult. And I struggled through that just to try to see where I'm at in terms of is there anything special I need to study going into the UK NAS so I feel at least ready in terms of what I need to accomplish. But then from the perspective of being a floor judge and having the community of judges around you in that setting, you're not alone. Mm-hmm. You can always holla another judge, can you come over here? Can we discuss this thing? And you also have your head judge if there's any appeals or if there's any tricky situations going on. And there were some tricky situations that happened. And sometimes you can see the head judges, scratching their head and be like, oh shit, how was going to solve this situation? And it's really, really tricky. Flesh and Blood is a really hard game. But when you have the support of each other, you can typically figure things out for the best possible situation.
Yeah, and this is actually a nice segue into his second question, which is, what advice can you give a new L1 judge that is scared to judge?
Try to find out why you're scared. I was scared because I didn't think I knew enough. Why am I here? I know I passed the level judge test, but that was a year ago, and I tried to pass the level 2 judge, and I failed one of them because there's 2 tests and you have to pass both of them. So I didn't feel accomplished enough. But then you go there, and then you get your first judge calls, and I tried to do my due diligence. I had bought this little handbook with me, and I had a pen. And so whenever I got a judge call, I made sure to write it down because I'm a lousy memory type of person. I have the worst memory. If someone asks me, what the first judge calls you did today? And I'm like, I don't know. I've done 11 at this point in time. I don't know what half of them were. So that was really interesting. So whenever I took a judge call, I made sure to take notes. And if there's anything I wanted to check up on later, I made sure to do that. But so make sure to just figure out why you're scared. Is it the social anxiety bit of it? Because you are a formal person in a formal setting and you're supposed to do a job, typically. You're paid to do the thing you're asked to do, right? So that can be very intimidating. I was quite intimidated, but doing judging in a safe space, try to find scenarios where you're not the judge, so to speak, for your first gig. Try to find a situation where you may already have a level 2 judge available and you just want to shadow that judge for that tournament, and maybe that is the stepping stone you need to then carry on forward and build some momentum. I think that is quite important and a good way to go about it, just to build some strength and momentum, because as I said, I didn't know this was going to be so much fun as I thought it was going to be, and I only knew by trying, right? And just to try and find that safe space where you find it's safe and it's not all on you, I think is the best way to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And something, if Armor, if maybe you're asked to, or anyone is asked to do a local event, I've found, not that I've judged, but judges that have judged local events for me, if they don't know, they go right to the judge Discord or whatever,
Yes.
and they answer right away, right? And then you can and there's no shame in doing that, right? Like there's a lot of rules, so you gotta
Yes.
and you'll never forget, right? As soon as you have to ask the first time, so it's a great way to learn. Next question.
Again, awesome community. Use it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, next question comes from the Turtle Maturin, who asks, how do you balance the different pools of judging, playing, casting an event when you'd want to do all three?
So typically I don't want to do all three. Like the national season came up so good that we had our nationals coming up the week before UK Nat, so I could do both of them, luckily. And I had the vacation days to do so. For Antwerpen, I was really exhausted at the game and I didn't know what to play. And I was banging my head against the wall being like, I am this try-hard person. I really want to do well at the tournament, but at the same time, I don't know what the fuck to play. And so I went into Antwerpen thinking, how am I going to solve this? And then Eye of the Ophidia caught me up and be like, hey, we got your name. Do you want to come cast with us? And I was like, I don't have to figure this meta out. I can just go there and cast and watch other people figure the meta things out and have a good time. So that one solved itself really, really good for me. Of course, I dunked out that I couldn't play so much as I wanted during the weekend, but at the same time, I only did 1 day of casting and half a day of playing side events, and then I joined in the casting booth at the end to help out, because you need someone to I don't know if you know this, but there needs to be a person administrating the cards that you see on the stream. That is not something that is done automatically. There's actually a person browsing cards, looking up cards, and posting those to the streams live as it happens. And so I did that, and I thought it was super fun. So I did that at the end of day 2 as well, for funsies. But yeah, for me, it has basically come down to convenience, and timing has been good to great, basically. So I've been able to do the things that I wanted. Like Baltimore is a perfect example of this, because I wasn't planning to go to Baltimore. I had no PT win or ProQuest win to go into that. I had no stakes in it. I had nothing whatsoever. But 2 of my friends, or Swedish friends, locals, were going to it, and my work just decided to give me 5 extra vacation days for the year, because reasons. And so I sat there 3 weeks or 3 or 4 weeks before Baltimore, and I was like, all of a sudden I have more vacation days than my boyfriend. I don't know what to do with it, and I need to use them this year. That was the prerequisite. And so I was like, boyfriend, would you be really mad if I went to Baltimore? And he was like, you really want to go to Baltimore, do you?
Yeah. Well,
and so I asked the friends that was going there if they had a spot left in their Airbnb, and they were like, yeah, sure, do you want to join? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then so I booked a flight, and I went over there and I stayed with them, and I played the Calling, and I played the Battle Harden, and I made top 8 in the Battle Harden, and voila, it was such a great event. The venue was fantastic, the main event was amazing, the whole venue and everything, it was just amazing. I was super happy to go. But yeah, convenience and luck, I guess, has come down to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, it's tough, especially when you get into different aspects of the game. You know, I found that you probably never want to do all 3. You just want to do one or the other, right? And you know, it's important to realize what it is, and also be flexible, just in case somebody calls you up to get in the booth. Next question comes from Sigma, who asks, would you change or add anything new or creative to the rules of Flesh and Blood?
I think we sort of went over this already. I'm very happy
with
with how the rules are right now. I mean, the way the rules were with the Miss Trigger, for example, was not great. I think the way they changed it into what it is today is still not amazing, but it's the best we can do. And it's, at the end of the day, leaves the responsibility where the responsibility makes the most sense, which is within the player that plays the cards, that they should hopefully know their cards the best, which might not always be the case, at least in Limited, because there's so many new cards and you have to adapt accordingly when you sit there in your draft, and all of a sudden you sit with a hero that you've never played before. So I mean, there's a lot of those things that relies on you as a player, but I think, as I said, it's the best that they can do with what we have, basically.
What a calm and adult-like answer. Why can't we all just be like Erika and just... All right, I'm sorry. I don't want to start any fights, or do I? Somebody come get me. No,
I feel that fire has burned out by this point, but
oh yeah. Well, you know what? Somebody will bring something up, and then it'll be like, oh, this is
oh, not here again. No.
Up in arms again. Last question comes from Capolo, who asked, "What is the hardest call you've had to make as a judge?"
Ooh. I can only remember UK Nats. Because I didn't do any big events before UK Nats as a judge. I did, as I mentioned, I've been a tournament organizer, so I've been doing like judges' duties on like local armories and stuff like that. Oh, but I remember, it wasn't my judge call, but I remember way back when we did what was the interaction? Oh yeah, it was a reckless swing. Discarding a beast within.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Reiner is on 1. I'm on 1. Does the Reiner die from beast within, or does reckless swing trigger first?
I think beast within kills Reiner, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a whole debacle, and we had a local armory where I was on the opposite end, and I was like, yeah, someone is gonna die this turn, and we just have to figure out who that is because nobody knows. And luckily we had a level 1 judge with us at that armory, and he took it upon himself that I need to figure this out because this is a super interesting interaction that doesn't happen quite a lot. So he went on the Discord and he asked the question, and he even called up his friend from another town that he knew was really good judge as well, and he was like, have you had this interaction? So it wasn't my interaction, but it was a really big one way back when we all were noobs, and none of us were certified level 1 judge, and we just like, how does this work? Like, this is the trigger, does this resolve first? Like, how does this work? So yeah. Very interesting. But from UK Nats, from my own perspective, I didn't really have a lot of tough ones. There was one where I misjudged that one, where you play Arcanite Crackle, I think it's called. It does 1 arcane.
Yes.
And he prefaced that with playing Seeds of Agony. So this Arcanite Crackle was all of a sudden coming in with 1 arcane and 1 arcane, 1 from the Seeds and 1 from his own ability, right? And his opponent was running a Spell Void 2 headpiece that I don't remember the name of, Hail of Illumination, maybe. And so the question was, what happens with the Spell Void if I want to activate that on this incoming arcane? Will it block all of the arcane, or will it just one and then fiddle out, you know? And so I looked at it and I was like, without looking up what Spell Void 2 does, my intuition just told me that, well, Spell Void 2 sees the first arcane coming in, and then blocks that, and then it's done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense to me, makes sense to the opponents and everything like that. And then luckily I had one of my other judges shadowing me during that call. And so I saw that he was frantically looking things up. So I realized that this might have a deeper thing to it than I realized at the time. So I looked up to him and I was like, am I on the right track here, or do you know something more that I don't? And he was like, yeah, I'm looking things up. Yeah, we need to talk. Okay, so we went away from the table and we discussed it. And he was like, yeah, I looked up Spell Void and it says you can block 2 sources of arcane from the same source, right? And since Seeds of Agony applies its arcane damage onto the Arcanite Crackle, then all of a sudden he has 1 arcane and then another 1 arcane, and it's from the same source, right?
Interesting.
So Spell Void will effectively block both of those instances. And I was like, interesting.
I would have been right on the same track as you, because like I was like, oh yeah,
exactly.
Of course it only blocks one of them. You know, you snooze,
and then it's
you
done,
lose.
right?
But
that's Spell Void, right?
Yeah.
This is not the normal, null rune where you just pay 1 and then you just pay another 1 and then you're cool with it. No. This is Spell Void. You just it sees 1 arcane and then it's done, right? No. So it actually blocks 2 from the same source, and it doesn't matter if it comes into 2 separate instances. It still sees the 1 source, and it sees 2 arcane coming from said source. So I was like, interesting. So I learned a lot that day, and that's all it is to it. Like, judging is basically a learning opportunity, and you are the one responsible making sure that you learn the right thing. And so I was super happy that I had my fellow judge with me on that one, because otherwise it'd been a sad day for the players involved.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a tough one, but hey, all worked out in the end. Now, Erika,
we all learned. It was good.
This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed you coming on. I enjoyed, very grateful that you gave us your time. I know it's a little bit late for you, in Sweden, but I thank you so much. Can you please plug anything you'd like to plug, and tell the buds anything they want to hear or should hear?
I I mean, I'm mostly active on Twitter. I don't do a lot of social media stuff these days, except for Twitter. I'm ravenous on Twitter. I'm at Erika Forslof on Twitter in one sentence, and you can find my adventures doing all of these things that we discussed in this episode, if that's interesting to you. Twitter or X or what we call it these days, I don't know. You know what I mean. Other than that, I might be looking into starting streaming myself sometime in the soon future. You will find my YouTube links and everything on said Twitter channel whenever I decide on a good name. Naming is hard.
Yes.
But yeah, that's where you find me.
All right. Well, all of that will be in the show notes. And I do agree, sometimes naming is hard because I didn't even think that people would think my podcast was a weed podcast until people started asking. So, you know what? Well, I think people know now. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Hopefully.
Who knows? I give up. I give up on it on Twitter, X, whatever. It's one of them. You know, you can continue to find me on Twitter at FreshBudsPod. You can find the show on Spotify and all the audio platforms, or watch it on YouTube, which you know is a great way to support the show. LSS loves the YouTube numbers, so give LSS what they love and all that fun stuff. The Buds Discord is a great place to hang out. A lot of great people in the Buds Discord, and you know, it's, you know, I'm always popping in there and just, you know, I like making bogus claims like Max will be Lena's brother or something like that. I don't know. But, you know, yeah, check all that stuff out. It's all very helpful for the show. Now, I always like to end the show, Erika, talking a little bit about food because I love food. And hit me with some local Sweden cuisine that, you know, that you really love and maybe you want the Buds to possibly check out at some point.
I don't know. Have you ever been to IKEA?
I have. I've never had the meatballs there. I was in and out. I was just getting a couch and leaving.
Sorry. No, we make a whole ordeal. We go there for early breakfast and we go down the whole, you know, shebang. And then we hit up the restaurant by lunch hour and we get the meatballs and the mashed potatoes and, you know, the whole shebang. No, I don't know. I really love testing out various restaurants here in Sweden as well. There was one restaurant that I really, really loved that is unfortunately closing down. So that one is a bit sad to promote. There is a popular place called Supper, I think it's called. I need to check.
Supper's
I misremember that with something else.
Pretty on the nose for a restaurant, I think.
Yeah, it's called Supper. So they have these, it's bang in the middle of the glamorous Stureplan, as we say here in Stockholm. It's like the fancy alley with all the, you know, fancy shops and the expensive attires and, you know. So Supper here in Stockholm, they have small appetizers that you order together, and it's like finger food, so you share with your friends. And they have amazing cocktails. They have the best mojito in the whole of Stockholm, as far as I know. So one of my absolute favorites to revisit from time to time.
A mojito in Stockholm sounds like a classic novel. If I've ever heard it, that's like an excellent title for a novel. Yeah, that's excellent.
I'd read it.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Well, Erika, this was a blast. Thank you so much. I'm hungry yet
Thank
again.
you.
Now that we talked about food, I do it to myself. We always leave time at the end for Charmer, but he's not going to make it today, so we'll get to him next week. But all right, thank you, and everybody, have a great week.